This is the story of how an empire fell and a revolution was born. Winter wrapped Russia in silence, but beneath the snow, anger simmered. In factories, men and women worked endless hours, yet returned home to empty plates. In villages, peasants tilled land they did not own. On the front lines, soldiers froze in trenches, fighting a war they no longer believed in. The empire stood tall, but the ground beneath it was shaking. It began quietly, a few workers leaving their machines, then dozens followed, then hundreds. The sound of their footsteps on icy streets grew louder than the Tsar's authority. They no longer marched for wages, they marched for survival. On a cold February morning, women filled the streets of Petrograd. Their voices cut through the wind, demanding bread, demanding peace. Mothers, workers, sisters, they were not just marching for themselves, but for a nation hungry and tired of waiting. As soldiers stood before the crowds, orders came to silence them with bullets. But looking into the faces of their own people, their hands trembled, rifles lowered, helmets tilted, and in that quiet moment, loyalty shifted from the throne to the streets. Far from the noise of the capital, the Tsar sat in the dim light of his train carriage. A pen scratched across paper, ending 3 centuries of Romanov rule. No grand farewell, no last stand, just silence, and an empire crumbling in the dark. In the weeks that followed, power split in two. One side promised reform, the other promised revolution. Ministers spoke in polished halls, while workers and soldiers gathered in crowded rooms. 2 governments, 1 country, a storm in the making. The sound of a train whistle echoed through Petrograd as a man stepped onto the platform. He carried no weapons, only words: peace, land, bread. For a starving nation, those words were louder than any army. Summer brought heat and fury. The streets erupted in anger, banners torn by wind and gunfire. The revolution was no longer a whisper. It roared through Petrograd like a storm too strong to contain. As trains filled with soldiers rolled toward Petrograd, the city held its breath. A coup threatened to crush everything, but it failed. And with its failure, the old guard weakened, and the Bolsheviks grew bolder. Every speech, every banner, every chant drew the city closer to a breaking point. The people no longer looked to the past. Their eyes burned with the promise of change. The tide of history was rising, and nothing could stop it. On a cold October night, shadows moved through Petrograd. No grand battles, no mighty armies, just the sound of boots, whispered commands, and the crash of a palace door. In a single night, power slipped from royal hands into those of the revolution. At a small table lit by candles, the revolution signed away land to buy time. The price was high, but for a nation torn by war, survival mattered more than territory. Peace did not bring rest. The country split in two, Reds fighting for a new world, Whites clinging to the old one. Villages burned, families fled, brother fought brother, Russia bled. Years of blood and ash finally gave way to silence. Amid the ruins, red banners rose against the pale sky. The revolution had survived. The old world was gone. And so, from the cold streets of Petrograd to the heart of Moscow, a new nation took its first breath. No crown, no Tsar, only a promise that power would belong to the people. The world had changed forever.